A very good afternoon to you. I'm Lisa Lord with the CBC News Break. Well, fingerprinting of Barbadians at the island's ports of entry will be a reality. This promise from Prime Minister Frondell Stewart, despite pending court action on the issue. Addressing a St. Michael's South Branch meeting, Mr. Stewart said using biometrics is the only way to guarantee the island's national security. He also says the issue was being discussed as Barbados was preparing to host Cricket World Cup 2007. The Prime Minister says he is aware a significant amount of fraud takes place in relation to passports and identification cards. In one example, Mr. Stewart says a man changed his name and acquired the relevant documents 3 times, but it was only picked up using fingerprints when he traveled overseas. The Prime Minister also denied that people will be fingerprinted every time they leave the island.
What was always intended to be the case is that if you're going through the airport and any officer suspects that you might be up to something other than good, or if a red flag goes up in terms of who you are and what you might be doing, because somebody can commit a crime here and be trying to flee the country. You can be asked to submit yourself to be fingerprinted just to make sure that your identity is established.
And the Public Service Act is to be completely overhauled. Prime Minister Stewart says the act, enacted in 2007, is fraught with problems. But Mr. Stewart says the act had to be allowed to work so that the issues could be identified and worked out.
You can't tell me that anybody was fit to act in a position for 7 years, but once you do an interview, all of a sudden the person becomes unfit to hold the position. After 7 years, that person would have altered their position, would have changed their spending patterns, would have taken on additional commitments based on the active money they were getting and so on. And then all of a sudden you throw that person's life into chaos by asking them to revert to some junior position where they have to now go through another traumatic period of adjustment. A lot of people retired from the public service as a result of that.
The Royal Barbados Police Force is mourning the loss of a senior cop. Acting Assistant Commissioner of Police Livingston Eversley collapsed and died at his Vauxhall Gardens Christchurch home last evening. The 58-year-old took over as ACP in charge of crime following the death of Acting Assistant Commissioner 53-year-old Mark Thompson last November. Just last month, he was involved in the Citizens Domestic Violence Workshop, which ran for 4 weeks. Mr. Eversley leaves to mourn his wife, daughter, and 2 grandchildren. A number of studies will have to be undertaken before the Empire Theatre in historic Bridgetown is restored. As soon as that is done, Minister of Culture Stephen Lashley is hopeful the developers will begin work on the Probin Street property. Mr. Lashley provided the update during a Democratic Labour Party St. Michael East branch meeting.
That is the update that I have on in terms of the Empire. But we had earmarked the building to be used as I believe the submission that was made was to have the building restored, but the usage would be as a craft brewery as well as a theater. So it'll be a dual usage, and I'm hoping that the relevant planning permissions can be sorted so that, of course, that project can get on the way.
And as Barbados prepares to host Carrie Festa next year, Mr. Lashley would like to see the Daphne Joseph Hackett Theatre up and running in time for the big cultural showcase.
Certainly, it is my wish that we get the Queen's Park buildings, the Daphne Joseph Hackett Theatre, up and running by then. We're going to be having some discussion shortly with the Minister of Finance. He's promised to have some dialogue with us and, of course, the financial sector so we can secure the necessary funds to get that those buildings in Queen's Park. They're historic buildings. They fall, as you know, within the historic World Heritage property of historic Bridgetown and its garrison, and we are very much on track. The only thing missing right now, of course, is getting the money.
Well, matters related to managing the effects of climate change were high on the agenda when newly appointed Australian High Commissioner to Barbados, John Pilbeam met with Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade Senator Maxine McLean. High Commissioner Pilbeam during the meeting said there were a number of similarities between Caribbean islands and the islands in the Pacific where negative effects of climate change could be seen. He believes the strategies used in the region were often very helpful to the Pacific Islands. Senator McLean used the devastating effects caused by unseasonal rainfall in Dominica, St. Lucia and St. Vincent in recent years as a testimony of the adverse effects of climate change. The Foreign Affairs Minister also pointed out that government would continue its efforts to encourage adaptation and mitigation and was keen to involve the private sector in working with government in those areas. Well, policies and procedures developed for Barbados' National Qualifications Framework, or NQF, will be examined by members of the Mauritius Qualifications Authority. The development and implementation of the NQF is a critical activity under the Barbados Human Resource Development Strategy 2011 to 2016. This strategy is being implemented by the Ministry of Labour, Social Security and Human Resource Development with funding from the European Union. The review is being undertaken during a two-day workshop for representatives of key organizations involved in the development, implementation and maintenance of the framework. The workshop is part of a scoping mission between the Mauritius Qualifications Authority and the BAC, both of which have entered into a partnership agreement to share knowledge, experience and expertise for the implementation of that framework. Well, stay with us. We'll have regional and international news right after this break.